Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? I blew my car's tire and my friend came in to bail me out. We're both straight dudes and forgot it was Valentine's. Decided to have dinner and both were coming from important meetings, so had suits on. We didn't catch on until the end on how the entire wait staff thought we were just the cutest gay couple. I served at a Japanese hibachi restaurant and once had a couple come and the dude dumps her after the meal. She then gets up and throws up a trail probably a good 20 feet as she runs to the bathroom. The dude got up and left the girl and I was left to clean the mess. There was a note in our reservations that it was an engagement. They wanted champagne, a specific seat, bunch of other stuff. The server comes up to the table with something like, "So I read we are celebrating an engagement. Congratulations." Confusion from the woman, glaring from the guy. He hadn't proposed yet. She ruined it. When I proposed to my fiance, I kept it a very small circle of people knowing so nothing could get spoiled. My grandfather didn't know till the day of because he has dementia. Her best friend is still mad I never told her, but she had ruined a birthday surprise months prior and I couldn't trust her after that. My wife's best friend at the time stopped being friends with my wife because I didn't involve her in my engagement plan. These two were on a date and the guy went to go use the bathroom. The girl just up and leaves after he went to the restroom. When the guy came back, he sat around for a while until asking his waitress where she went. She replied with saying that she left. The guy then asked the waitress if she would go on a date with him. The waitress said no. They came in at lunch the day after, so it was pretty empty, but it was still for a Valentine's Day date. They were both pretty nice at the beginning. The guy asked for a picture and whatnot. As the meal went on, the dude got progressively drunker, and by the time I brought the check out, the woman was gone. When the dude gave me his card, he said, "I'll give you a bit of advice. If you're taking a girl out to break up with her, do it at a McDonald's and not an expensive restaurant. I don't understand why some people think it's a thing to break up at a restaurant. Dump me in private, please. If we have plans to go out, dump me beforehand." Not a waiter, but in my strip club bouncer days we had one of our regulars get sweeted up and bring flowers in 1v day to try and woo one of the dancers. It did not work. Pro tip: if every time you'll hang out it involves you giving her money, she is not into you. He proposed. She said no. He cried and tried to change her mind for 20 minutes while she sat there stony faced. She finally got up and walked out. He paid and left in tears. Why are there so many people proposing to people they've not discussed marriage with before? It blows my mind. Exactly. The answer to a proposal should never be a surprise. She said yes. I knew she'd say yes. I know she wanted to marry the duck out Tammy because we talked about this. It should never be like, well, give it a go, because I feel like we should, and maybe she thinks so as well. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there, it was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant including the bar and patio from 4 p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was cancelled or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude however kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he is seated, constantly saying how he is a regular customer and how his date is going to be there at 7. He got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table. But because the amount of reservations, we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50 the guy loses it. Fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete shit because the only copy of the reservations for the night that is barely half over is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back. But by the time they got out he had already left the parking lot. Even better is, 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant and the dude shows back up saying he has a reservation for 2. 3 of the 5 of the owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying, "Do not serve this man. TL. Doctor." Salty dude without reservation steals reservation book and then tries to come back later. Edit. If anyone wants to use this for a sitcom, feel free. Just let me reprise my role as the waiter and we can call it even. All I can picture is this dude thinking that he can get his way by essentially reenacting the restaurant version of that joke/urban legend with the university student who finishes his exam late. And when the proctor won't accept it, the student asks, "Do you know who I am?" Then, when told no, he grabs the stack of exam booklets and flings them into the air and runs out. Not wait staff, but I used to work front desk at a hotel. One Valentine's Day I was working the night shift, and this woman comes down with a cut above her eye looking like she just went a few rounds in the ring with a boxer. Woman starts sobbing and asks us to call the coos, which we do immediately. Turns out this girl's boyfriend just beat the shit out of her during a fight. And from what I could tell, this probably wasn't the first time. So after the cops show up and haul the dude off, my manager offers her a different room on campus. We need to leave the guy's stuff where it is for him to pick up the next day. She accepts, and I go up with the woman to help her collect her stuff and move to the new room. There were a bunch of bottles of alcohol in the room, and she donated them to the front desk staff. I got a bottle of Hypnotic and some vodka. Manager got a bottle of Patron. Cherry on top of everything. The dude's wife called later that night saying someone had stolen his card as he was out of town on a business trip. Never wanted to offend an abuser. I told her where she could find her husband. Fun times. Thanks for telling the wife. My mother has been cheated on and the hotel staff wasn't able to tell her anything. I understand why they're not able to, but thank you for doing that for a stranger. I had a section 1V day that had a marriage proposal, a 40th anniversary, and a breakup all at the same time. The breakup was the worst. The guy brought his high-class date a gift, a mini ceramic bear holding balloons. He presented it when I was at the table and she looked at it like it was a hot turd. I just knew this was not going to end well. She left at the end of the meal and must have said something because he stayed at the table for another 40 minutes. Head down and crying. I felt bad. He saw the celebrations going on at the other tables. This was relayed to me by a close friend. Older woman, probably in her upper 90s with her teenage grandson at a semi-classy restaurant. She was dressed to the nines and the grandson was in a nice button-up and dress slacks. As they got seated at their table, the grandson placed a framed photo of what my friend assumed was the boy's grandfather and husband of the older women. Semicolon. Found out it would have been their 70th wedding anniversary, but he had passed suddenly but peacefully a few months back. The grandfather had always wanted to take her to a nice restaurant, but never had the time or money to do it. So the grandson saved up his pay from the last couple of months and even got some donations from other relatives and took her to the restaurant. They ate dinner remembering all the good times with the man. They had my friend to take a picture and she did. They tipped my friend very well. Semicolon. By happenstance my friend ran into the young man some weeks later to find out the grandmother passed away a few days after that night, peacefully in her sleep holding a photo of her beloved husband. He was so happy he could make that night special to her. Said it was the only day he saw her smile since his grandfather passed away. He got the picture they took at the restaurant printed and wallet sized and carried it around with him in his wallet. Edit. Fixed some spelling and added more details after speaking with my friend again. I'm not a great writer so this might diminish the story. I tried though. Thank you for the award. And I posted this to bring something a little different to the thread other than cheating spouses. It's sad because the lady lost her soulmate of 70 something years before Valentine's Day, which also would have been their wedding anniversary. Not a waiter, but I was a pastry chef at this big resort in Cape Cod. We got a special order from this guy who was coming in for his anniversary, Valentine's Day. He wanted his dessert to have, "Will you marry me?" written on it, so he could pop the question when it came out. He called ahead to the front and back kitchen. Even came in himself that morning to make sure it was good to go. The whole crew was behind him. We had cooks all night coming in the ask if it had happened yet. I wrote the inscription on the plate and dressed it to the nines with gold leaf and expensive chocolate. I'm taking a picture of the plate just before it's set to go out and notice our head waiter come in with a weird look on his face. He says plainly they don't need it. She broke up with him before the entrees hit the table. A guy did a backflip and asked a girl to be his Valentine. She declined. I walked up to him and asked if he was fine. He said it took him a week to perfect. I was eating in a fine dining establishment, Chili's, several years ago. In the next booth was a really young guy who had a big bunch of roses on the seat next to him. He kept looking at his watch, looking at the roses, and popping open a ring box for a peek at the ring. He did this for a half hour or so, then began calling and texting someone, presumably his girlfriend, over and over. As we were waiting for our check, he hands my wife the roses, mumbled something, and walked out. Poor guy. Edit. I don't consider Chili's a fine dining experience. My wife and I had done some shopping and stopped off for a burger and beer afterwards. Walking back to my dorm room, once a guy was carrying roses. I think this was around Valentine's Day. I don't remember. And he handed one to me. Made my day because it had been a crappy long day, but I wonder what kind of day he had to be having to be handing out roses to strangers. Had a couple sign divorce papers and cry a bunch. A guy proposed to his girlfriend and she said no. The guy threw his arms up and ran out of the building. Later, while waiting for someone to pick her up, she told us it was completely out of the blue because they'd only been dating for a few months. Another V-Day, a guy raised a huge fuss over the fact that we wouldn't serve liquor to his underage girlfriend. I'm certain you mean he threw up his hands momentarily in exasperation. But I can't help picturing him running out of the restaurant arms straight up Kermit the Frog style. A 16-year-old boy proposed to a 15-year-old girl with a cheap ring and the whipped cream of her dessert. She said yes. So romance isn't quite dead yet. Don't you know what happens when kids that young get married? It's all romance until the mutual suicide. At least their families might stop their bloody feud. 16 years in hospitality gives you some good stories. The most awkward. My first job as a waitress, a guy wanted to propose to his girlfriend. He came in 2 months before to book and had everything figured out. He planned to pop the question during dessert. We had champagne, balloons and sparklers prepped for the big moment. The time comes. He drops to one, he gives a speech about his love for her. He asks. She says no. Puts the ring in her bag. Finishes her dessert and leaves. Quite possibly the most awkward thing I have had to witness, alongside around 200 other people. The manager gave him everything for free. He felt that bad for him. Cringed inside every time I saw him after that. The most ducked up. I was working as a duty manager, and one of the tills kept dropping off the network. As I was trying to fix it, I could clearly hear the conversation of the table by the waiter's station. It started out sweet enough with her excitedly telling him she was pregnant. He went quiet and didn't say anything for a bit, and then asked her what the plan was. She said she was keeping the baby. He said he didn't want kids and had told her this. She got upset and said she thought he'd be happy and change his mind when he found out. By this point I fixed the till, but am unable to step away from this car crash. Turns out she stopped taking the pill without telling him, thinking she could turn him around. He said he knew she could be a little nuts sometimes, but this was next level. He told her it was over and she could send someone to collect her things as he wanted nothing more to do with her. He called me over to pay the bill and just left. The guy never even shouted. He just calmly went duck this and noped out of there. I couldn't even look her in the eye. Just left her to leave in her own time. The funniest, managing hotel room service, where there was a Valentine's package that included getting each course of the special menu delivered to your room. More than a few couples thought it was a good idea to call for the next course and then start having sex. Having to help with deliveries as reception ducked up the bookings, I had the privilege of people answering the door naked, seeing sex toys strewn around, and one where the other members of the threesome were carrying on in the background. After complaints of similar instances from my team, I had to take action. I ended up having to call the offending guests and tell them if they could not respect my team by answering the door in at least a closed dressing gown, they could come down and collect the rest of their meal from the restaurant. Bonus from the same night, had to call an ambulance for a woman with a dislocated shoulder. The guy admitted that they were trying to recreate a buckache type scene in the shower using conditioner as the cum. He slipped in the conditioner and fell on her. Old man proposed to old woman. He tried to get off the chair to kneel, tripped and fell, and I assume broke something since he couldn't get back up, and we had to call an ambulance. My manager had to drive her teeth to the hospital separately because she had taken them out to eat a soup, Lord knows why, and left them on the table in the confusion. Edited to at, I don't know if she said yes. My manager didn't get to see them at the hospital, only pass on her teeth to the nurse. Thank you kindly for the gold and silver though, because she had take them out to eat a soup, Lord knows why. Some of the adhesive products used to keep denture in the mouth really can't take much heat. Assuming the soup was hot, the adhesive would just turn into goo and drip in her mouth in addition to not holding the dentures in. Busboy on Las Vegas Strip, an attempted proposal. Dude tries to set up sign with GF's friends for her to show up and see the ring near a fountain. Duck stole the ring. They found it 2 hours later as he dropped in the fountain. She still said yes. Free drinks were given. Back when I served food at one of those super touristy seafood restaurants, I worked a Valentine's Day double shift. For lunch, this younger couple came in celebrating their 1-year anniversary. I offer my congratulations and proceed to do my usual spiel before taking orders. The girl is looking more and more dismayed the longer I talk. Finally I get to the end and ask if there are any allergies. She looks directly at her boyfriend and states, "Yes, I'm allergic to fish and shellfish." Then looks over at me very sad. I made sure every aspect of her meal was fine for her, but it was that look of we've been dating a year and he still takes me to a restaurant that could kill me. That really did it for me. That reminds me when my parents got me a huge strawberry filled cake with strawberries on it for my 25th birthday. I'm deathly allergic to strawberries. Not my table, but back in my Olive Garden days, we had a man who looked to be in his mid-20s tap his empty wine glass with a fork to call for attention of the surrounding strangers, then get down on one knee with silver band in hand and ask his girlfriend/date to accept this promise ring. She looked horrified start to finish. I was the manager of a wings and pizza place with a full bar, definitely not the kind of place you'd take someone for a romantic Valentine's Day dinner. But it was still busy because some people aren't very tactful. We had a guy who had called ahead and asked if we could put a ring and a dessert for him, and of course, we obliged. He dropped the ring off the day ahead and I put it in the safe in our office to keep it secure. Fast forward to Valentine's Day, the couple shows up and they are so obviously in love that she didn't seem to notice or care about the fact that he had brought her to a middle of the road place with a sports bar atmosphere on the most romantic day of the year. They ordered champagne. Well, the local winner is best sparkling white, entrees, and it was almost time for dessert. I had used my chef skills to whip up a special chocolate strawberry tart that wasn't on the menu, just for this occasion, because why not try to make their night at least a little fancy? Close bracket. I went to the safe to get the ring, and it wasn't there. I was freaking out big time. I asked everyone there if they knew what the duck had happened to it. My assistant manager on site had no idea, so I called my other assistant, who also had the safe code, and they didn't know either. Finally, my bar manager mentioned that one of the owners had been in earlier and spent a little time in the office. So, at my wit's end, I called the owner. It turns out that he had seen the ring in the safe and thought it was something a customer had left behind. Figuring that he had come into an extremely lucky situation, he decided, like the scumbag he was, that he'd take it for himself and save money on a gift for his wife on Valentine's. So, I asked the server and bar manager to help stall the couple. The server told them that we were going to do something special for their big date, and to hold tight. I ran out, hopped in my car, and rushed to get the ring from the owner's house because he was, as I had mentioned, a scumbag and didn't want to be bothered with bringing the ring to the restaurant himself. The bar manager went over to the table and did some complicated tableside cocktail mix that had a bunch of flair bartending tricks and ended with a flaming shot that, once dropped into the rest, made it smoke. I was really disappointed when I heard about all of this, because I would have loved to see it instead of breaking a ton of traffic laws on my quest to get the ring. Finally, I rushed back in after about 15 minutes of being on the brink of a heart attack, placed the ring on the dessert, and had their server take it out. At that point, just about the entire staff was watching the table, and when we saw the look on her face, my heart finally started beating again. She said yes, and I started looking for someone else to work for the very next day. Edit. Thanks for the awards, everyone. In college I waited tables and Valentine's Day was always a good one in terms of tips. I once saw a couple come in to eat. Halfway through the dinner the man's wife shows up to surprise the couple. The wife took the wine bottle and poured the remnants on the husband's head, took off her ring, and told the girlfriend she could have him. He tipped me a $100. Had a man and woman sharing dessert and the man playfully put a bit of the ice cream on her nose. She then did the same, and he did it back once more, but with a different flavor of ice cream. She then flipped out at him. Because you know I like chocolate the most, why would you waste it, you idiot? In the end she stormed out cause the man couldn't comprehend how much she was blowing up the situation. TLDR. Man put ice cream on woman's nose. She is fine with it the first time. The second time she rages and leaves. I was working for a higher end chain steakhouse in the northwest corner of Greater Los Angeles, in the Valley. Valentine's is obviously one of the top 5 busiest days of the year for us. We did about 500 covers between 5 and 10 PM. It's also a restaurant with a very open concept floor plan. Booths along the 4 walls of the restaurant and an array of tables in the middle with no partitions or anything between them. A younger couple, maybe mid-20s, dressed to the nines came in shortly after we opened and were seated in a table basically in the dead center of the dining room. They were very friendly and pleasant, and I could tell that for them. Dining at our restaurant was a really special treat, so I did everything in my power to make it special for them. When they're done, probably around 7, I brought their check, which was around $300. When I came back to pick it up, the guy had a super embarrassed look on his face, and he said he thinks he left his wallet in the car, and the woman, who is embarrassed for him, doesn't have anything with her because her dress had no pockets and she didn't bring a purse. So he goes out and 5 minutes later comes back in looking pale as a ghost. He has left his wallet at home and asks if he can call back later with payment info. My GM won't let this fly because there's no collateral of any sort he can leave. So the guy has to drive home to Burbank to get his wallet while the woman waits with her hair done and her red lipstick and her pretty dress in the middle of the dining room on Valentine's Day. Now, on the best day with no traffic. Never happens. It's at least 40 minutes each way from our restaurant to Burbank. She was there for almost 2 hours waiting for this guy. We were also embarrassed for her that the staff kept discreetly slipping her drinks and little amuse-bouche bites from the kitchen. It was one of the most awkward things I've ever seen in a restaurant. When he finally got back, he was super apologetic to us and to her. He paid the check and tipped like 30% and they left. It was pretty obvious it was an honest mistake, but I still think about that couple from time to time and wonder how things worked out for them. Posting this from my phone, so apologies for any typos or formatting problems. I was working as a waitress in a sushi restaurant and Valentine's Day was an all hands on deck shift. This guy I had just started seeing wanted to go out, but I told him that working in food service, you never get Valentine's Day off, and we'd just have to celebrate the day after, or the weekend after. Nope. He got so upset that he went and asked a different girl out. Came to the restaurant I worked at on V-Day and sat in my section. He then proceeded to spend the entire evening making a fool out of himself and making his date uncomfortable as he tried to make me jealous. Needless to say, we didn't go out again. Ever. If he had surprised you at work and brought a couple friends that didn't have dates for dinner so that he could still see you on Valentine's Day, he'd have earned a million points. But nope. Not only did he get mad over something stupid, he blew it with 2 women at once. Honestly, I'm kinda ducking impressed. That's an obviously insane level of confidence. Edit. Gotta love being exhausted and thinking you typed out words that were in your head. Totally. When I first saw him getting seated by the hostess, I thought he was coming to surprise me, and I thought it was so sweet. Then the awful reality slowly dawned on me. My coworkers were just as livid once they realized what was going on. I set my hair on fire and spilled a full Stella on a lady. I work in a causal fine dining steakhouse. Luckily for me, the lady I spilled the Stella on was super understanding, and her husband said from across the table, well, now she has to take her pants off. So that could have gone worse for me. A couple sitting at the bar were enjoying their night out. The man got up from his bar stool and left for the bathroom. As his girlfriend was alone and absolutely wasted at the bar, a random woman approached and revealed that she recently matched with the woman's boyfriend on Tinder and had hooked up a week earlier. The drunk girlfriend refused to believe this story, so the woman showed her his Tinder profile and their conversation. The boyfriend returned to a drunk, sobbing and screaming girlfriend. I felt like I was watching a reality TV show. It was incredible. The poor girl was basically carried out of the bar by her boyfriend of 3 years, whom she just discovered has been cheating on her for who knows how long. It was the most dramatic moment I have ever experienced, and it was absolutely none of my business. Edit. I was a bar back at the time, and this couple sat directly in front of the place I spend most of my time, the glass washing station. Edit 2. For those wondering how the woman knew the couple was in a long-term relationship, I really don't know. My guess is she figured it out the same way I did, based on listening, body language, and the fact that this woman was overly touchy and liberal with cheek kisses and such. It was fairly obvious. Regardless, she approached out of concern and curiosity, and she succeeded in outing the guy, which resulted in a very upsetting scene. Yes, this kind of stories. I worked in a restaurant and we close at 10 PM. Those two ladies just kept crying and talking and showed no signs of leaving. Our standard for this is to ask if they need more tea every 5 minutes, and one of the ladies just asked me to sit with my managers. Not, I did. They were not my table, so I didn't know. Actually 3 of them came in. Turns out the husband of one was there at the beginning, and when he left for the toilet, the other lady broke and told her that her husband hit on her and has had a reputation of being flirty and harass while at work. The husband came back to a teary-eyed wife and her friend, so he just grabbed his bag, paid and left. The two left after another 20 minutes of tear-filled conversation and left me a $50 tip. Ex-barista here. Hope that is close enough. Some guy on Valentine Day came in and asked us to write on the cup, "Will you marry me?" It did not go well. She looked at the cup while he went down on one knee. She said nothing, put the cup back down, and just walked away shaking her head. D, on the other hand, got pissed and started to rant about how she should have gotten over him sleeping with her sister already. We had to ask him to leave. Edit. Oh, I have a good story, if you don't mind me sharing. Not on V-Day though. We had a guy come in and asked us to write, "Will you go to the prom with me?" She said yes so happily. I think they ended up engaged 2 years later, since we started to see rings on their fingers. They were lovely regulars and I wish them the best. IDK, but I'll find out Friday, cause I work a ducking double, and it's Applebee's. Update. Sorry Reddit. I've been working a shit ton and haven't had a minute to update you guys. So basically, Valentine's Day at Applebee's wasn't much different than any other Friday night working there. But, I will say, a lot of people were stingy as duck with their tips. And I mean a lot of people. Also, there was a couple who dined and dashed, and there was a dude who got stood up. Other than that, it was about as trashy as normal. Happy belated Valentine's Day everybody. Back to work I go. 2 failed marriage proposals on the same Valentine's Day. The first one simply said no, I can't do this, and walked out. The second one stared like a deer frozen in the headlights for an excruciating 30 seconds before muttering, "Let's talk about this later." They stayed for the rest of their 6-course V-Day special dinner, eating and making painful small talk. If you aren't 100% certain the person will say yes, then your relationship is nowhere near a point where getting engaged is an option. I was working at a corporate sports bar that specialized in chicken wings. V-Day, like most days, was insanely busy. As the evening winds down, someone calls in saying they're a professional food critic and demanded to speak to the manager. After a 15-minute call, the manager tells us the critic rated us a B and said the food was good, but the service sucked. He said he would leave that last part out of his review if we comped his meal and gave him vouchers for free meals in the future, but he refused over and over to say where he worked. Confused, the manager talked to the server, who confirmed that the guy ate alone, ran her around ragged while shamelessly hitting on her, and left 0 tip. He wrote his phone number on the tip line. Thirsty bitch wanted free food because the server didn't call him immediately for a date. I used to work as an editor for one of the bigger newspapers in the US, and the role of food critic at the time was super interesting. He was a quiet, unassuming older man, and there was an impressive amount of effort put forward in keeping his identity a secret. For one, he never ate alone. He would invite coworkers, mostly on the editing side, so they wouldn't be recognized, and very occasionally his friends to go with, so he was never with the same group of people. He would also ask everyone to order something different, so he could try multiple dishes without coming back too often and raising suspicion. He would hit each restaurant several times, at different times of day and different days of the week, before making his review. He would also never be the one who paid for the meal. Instead, he would have someone who came with pay for it, and then the paper would compensate them once presented with a check. There were no photos of him on the company website or anywhere in the system, and I think I only saw him actually come into the office once or twice to chat with his editor. He also made a point to have a wide variety of clothing styles to wear out, but nothing that made him stand out. I always thought it was over the top until his editor got a phone call from an extremely angry restaurant owner that had received a bad review. He was demanding to know when the critic had come in order to check the security cameras and figure out who it was, and also demanding a redo where they could give the critic a VIP experience. I get it now. Ruth Riegel, who was the New York Times food critic for the middle of the 1990s, wrote a memoir link, goodreads.com/book/show/80,642 garlic_and_sapphires about her time there and the lengths to which restaurants would train their staffers to recognize her. She bought a series of wigs and created a few alternate personas so she could be treated differently in restaurants. Her first published review was for Les Erklink, nightimes.com/1993/10/29/art/restaurants065093 HTML. A restaurant that you'd hear on TV shows as a coded phrase for snooty fine dining place you can neither afford nor get a table at, where she went 5 times, twice having been recognized, where she was treated like a queen, and the prior 3 visits included having a wine list jerked out of her hand because the waiter needed one for another table. She gave the place 3 stars instead of its accustomed 4, and the foodie chattering class acted like she'd blown up the dining room. It was a significant, but well-earned blow to Les Erk's reputation. Her books are pretty funny. Saw a couple have a full-on argument at a restaurant. I wasn't their server, but the table was directly in the center of the restaurant and they were certainly loud enough for everyone to hear. My manager kindly asked them to leave, and the guy's response was to yell, "I've been wanting to do that shit for 2 years now," and stormed out. A girl that I work with went to lunch on Valentine's Day at an expensive restaurant her boyfriend had gotten a reservation for. She got dressed up nice, was going on about how sure she was that he was going to propose. He broke up with her. I walked up to a table and was about to drop off the bill. Caught the end of "It's over." Guy looked at me dead in the eye and said to split that duck in check. Right now. Apostrophe. A few years ago, I had finished my shift at a pub I was working at and sat at the bar with a drink. There were still a few couples sat in the restaurant, but the boss let me clock off early. I had a pint before leaving, and at a table nearby, it sounded like a proposal was about to happen. A few people went quiet listening in. Then, it happened. Guy, "Hannah, will you marry me?" He was kneeled in front of his girlfriend. Her sat down. Girl, "Hannah, who the is Hannah?" she yelled. Threw her drink at him and walked out. Guy paid and walked out, looking very red. Probably not the kind of story you're looking for. But one Valentine's Day at my restaurant we got totally slammed, and the kitchen started melting down. In the middle of dinner service the head chef freaked out, threw a side of salmon at one of the line cooks and walked out. Someone showing up for a date and you both realize about 30 minutes and she ain't coming. Drinks on me, buddy. Maybe that's what I should do next time I'm single or don't have plans on day. Go around to different places and get free shit. Not a total disaster, but still not good. Had a table of 2 people, probably in their mid-40s last year. Took 45 minutes for this couple to get their entrees due to our kitchen being way too slammed. When they were dropped at the table, they immediately asked for to-go boxes because they told their babysitter they'd be home by a certain time. I overheard the wife say, "Well, I guess this is why we don't celebrate Valentine's Day." The worst part was that they weren't angry, just very sad. My personal feelings about dining out on Valentine's Day aside, I felt so horrible that this couple clearly had put in an effort to have a nice night with each other, only to have it go that way. We calmed their meals. BTW. Edit to clear up some timing issues. I should have added more context to this the first time, but wanted to keep it simple. They made a reservation, but unfortunately got seated about 10 minutes late. They ordered a round of drinks while looking over the menu, then a salad course, and then entrees. So at the point their entrees arrived they had already been in the restaurant for close to an hour and a half. Small, fine dining restaurant. Man from my table goes to the restroom and is gone for a while, probably 10 minutes, which for a restaurant is a while, as in passing by the restroom has all PSSSS, ushering me to the side and hurriedly whispering that he needs to leave through the kitchen because his wife's best friend was sat near he and his date, who of course, as I learned then and there, is not his wife. We box the remaining courses up and do a walk of shame through the kitchen. Hes pissed, she's crying, all while the rest of us are stifling our laughter. He ended up tipping well on the prick's fikes, which was nice. Happened to my poor co-worker. A guy and his date came in for Valentine's Day. They had a great time, ate a lot of food, drank a lot of wine, and got along really well with my co-worker, who was their server. About 2 months later they come back in and request my co-worker again, who happily says yes to serving them. He goes up and greets them. The guy introduces his wife to him, and my co-worker mentions something about how much he enjoyed serving them on Valentine's Day. They go quiet. Wife gets up and leaves. Guy just lowers his head. Turns out he had brought his mistress in on Valentine's Day, but my co-worker didn't realize he was with a different woman this time around, so didn't think anything of it. We never saw the guy again. Guy was a pose for cheating obviously, but also what an idiot to request the server he had while with the other woman. Dude took a test drive with the mistress and decided the server was good enough for the wife. Couples who are close to the spring breakup trying to save everything on one meaningless holiday dinner. You see at least one every year. I waited on one of the owners of the restaurant I was working at with his girlfriend and her twin kids. Kinda weird, but probably didn't get a babysitter. He had been dating this woman for a number of months, but it was his first Valentine's Day on a date that wasn't his wife in decades. I don't think he was ready, but he was there to support the business. He broke down crying during dinner, and it was heartbreaking. They left early. Nothing too scandalous, but I'd say happy Valentine's Day pretty much to any couple that sat at my tables. Occasionally one of them would say something like "we are not dating." Some of the times, the other person would give a look that pretty much confirmed that they both had very different interpretations of what was going on. There's an episode of 30 Rock where they mention that going to IKEA is a big stress test in relationships. That has nothing on going to a restaurant on the busiest days of the year, particularly Mother's Day and Valentine's, especially when it's on a weekend. I'd say 99% of the disasters I've seen have just been normal run-of-the-mill issues where couples realize they have different levels of patience, and one person undoubtedly gets aggravated with the packed restaurant, and their time is ruined. Do you ever say happy Mother's Day and get a she's not my mother in response? I would usually say happy MOTHERS day, with my voice slightly raising with each word, unless it was a whole family with kids. I figured that way, if it wasn't a mother, she wouldn't be mad, but if she was, it could play it off in a no way you're old enough to be a mom, in a flattering way, not a judgmental way. Not really a disaster, but this guy came in and said he was waiting for his date. He stayed for 5 hours waiting, and she never showed. He eventually ordered 4 for himself and asked that I remove the other glass of water from the table. He said it was their first date. Was a server at a popular seafood chain that isn't very fancy, but when you live in a town like the one I worked in, that sort of place is the nicest place to go for Valentine's Day. Well, the night was incredibly busy when a couple came in. They were upset after waiting 45 minutes for a table, and they were complaining quite a lot. The woman was decked out in a super nice dress and Fork's fur coat that was actually very realistic. Well, she was sat and served her frozen drink. She goes to lift the glass to her mouth, and inexplicably, the bottom of the cup simply breaks and the drink is spilled all over her dress and nice coat. Was unfortunate. Edit. To everyone asking about the restaurant. Yes, it's the place you all think it is. Red Lobster is a wild place. It was like a movie. I was bartending at an Italian restaurant, not a fancy one, but still, and it's pretty much full of Valentine's dates. A guy walks in and sits at the bar by himself, looking pretty down. He asked for a whiskey, so I poured it. Told him it was on the house because he looked like he needed it. He proceeds to tell me his story. Semicolon. He had come to the city to surprise his girlfriend for Valentine's, about a 5-hour bus trip between cities, and he sure surprised her. She was in her dorm room ducking one of his friends from high school. He didn't know what to do, so he just walked into the first place that sold alcohol. I spilled as much whiskey as he wanted and watched the Raptors with him. Never saw him again. It's cliche, but it happened. Edit. Watch the Raptors isn't a euphemism. We watched the basketball game. Not my story, but a co-worker, which happens to be my cousin, told me this story. One day a guy enters the taco restaurant where we worked at. He was a waiter, so he goes on to bring the menu to the table. The guy, 20-ish, says he's waiting for someone, so he's gonna wait to order a full meal. But as waiters we are taught to insist a little more and sell something. So the guy finally orders the cheapest item on the menu, a small carne asada taco. Just one. A few hours went by. The dude's date still hadn't arrived, and every 20 or so minutes he would order another one of those small tacos. Eventually the owner of the place, who is a really cool dude and has been a friend of my family for years, tells the waiters, look at this poor sucker. If the girl never arrives, I'll pay for everything he has ordered myself. So another hour and a half goes by and this dude finally gives up and asks for the check. He looked pretty sad, so as a waiter of his age, my cousin told him everything he consumed was on the house. He smiled and left good tips anyway. Stay strong guys, or gals, if she/he has you waiting that long. She/he's probably not worth it anyways. My own. When my GF got sick on the train home, 2 guys tried to sexually harass the 2 of us, only to get back to her car at 3:30 am and realize she had no gas. After I managed to drive us home on MT, I saw a note on the dining room table. Apparently, my roommate had been taking the $100 I was giving him each month for rent and using it to pay off his fines and fees from his recent DUI, and hadn't paid the rent for 3 months and we were on the verge of eviction. I worked at a sports bar. Every couple there on Valentine's Day was a divorce waiting to happen. A nice lady brought her kid in for dinner, got seated at a table next to her husband and his mistress. My first day of work on the floor at a country club was the weekend after Valentine's Day. There was a lot of buzz in the back about this adorable family, where every year the mom brought the son out to a nice dinner at the club and the father brought the daughter to the men's section for a dinner, which shows how much pull the guy had, since women weren't allowed in that part of the club. It was their Valentine's Day tradition. The kids are both 14 or 15. Had also been filled in on the gossip that the waitress I replaced had left to have a baby. She was really young and there was blanket disapproval from the staff and a lot of the members. Him serving the mom and son in the more upscale dining room, but getting drinks from the bar where the dad and daughter are. So him around both groups, him bringing a bottle of wine to the mom. When a woman walks in with a baby in a carrier and starts handing personalized golf balls out to people as a birth announcement sort of thing. She hands one to the mom at the table and one to the son and walks off when the mom knocked her wine glass to the floor and starts whisper shouting at the son. People are congratulating the new mom and pretending to be friendly, and then each table seems to go perfectly quiet one after another. I go to the bar to get a new wine glass and see a man duck over to the dad's table and say something to him. The man gets up without saying a word, even to his daughter, and dashes into the men's locker room, leaving her sitting at the table. The whole room goes quiet, but nobody intervenes as the old waitress goes over to the table, hands the girl a golf ball, says a few words I can't hear, then walks out of the club. The girl starts sobbing. Eventually, the mom seems to have remembered the daughter because the brother comes and leads her out, and they all leave together. When I was clearing the table, I read the golf ball, which says, waitress plus member, dad, present, baby first name and member's last name, and the date. I saw a couple have a full-blown argument in the middle of the restaurant. The woman stood up, took her ring off, threw it at him and walked out. The man continued his meal, had dessert and then paid the bill, left a pretty big tip for the inconvenience and left. I've done this once. We were having a drink and I don't even remember what I said. My boyfriend got really pissed and just walked away. Not a big loud argument, but there was a bit of cutting remarks. After he left, I slowly finished my drink and left. 15 minutes after him. I didn't want people to figure out that he left me there like an idiot, so I just tried to act normal. Plus there wasn't a single chance that I was going to run after him. Edited to fix a typo. I was once having dinner with my then girlfriend. She was in the middle of a scholarship application process, and mid-dinner she received a phone call. She had to hand in some papers before an office closed that day. She apologized and ran to her house to get the papers. I stayed, finished my dinner, and asked for takeaway for her. When the waitress brought me the bill, she gave a piece of cake, saying her manager was sorry for me. I took the cake home and shared it with my girlfriend. It was my first week serving, and I was trying to do everything by the books. This normal seeming couple is satisfied throughout the meal. I ask if the check would be together or separate. Big mistake. I figured it would be together and go to the gentleman, but not wanting to assume I asked. They say together. NBD, I go get the check and drop it off. Come back and she's writing a paragraph about how I shouldn't have asked. I grab my manager and she stops by the table and crazy lady complains. They leave. The gentleman tips me well and seems embarrassed at the situation. Crazy lady fills out our survey complaining and calls the store 3 times after to complain. I brushed it off because she obviously had insecurity issues, but damn, what a wild ride. I was a waitress many moons ago, and 2 couples spring to mind. The first were an older couple who were dressed nicely. They were polite and cordial to me, but not overly enthusiastic or friendly. They were at the table for a little over an hour and a half, and we didn't see them say one word to each other during that time. Every time I went over to their table, the atmosphere felt like it walked straight into an argument, but they weren't speaking, or looking at each other or anything. It very quickly became awkward as duck. The second couple was meant to be having a proposal dinner. The guy had rung to book a table and had let us know he was going to propose during dessert. Had given the ring to kitchen staff so we could bring it out with a cake, and had got some balloons and streamers too. Anyway, he walks in a couple of steps behind his partner. Everyone has big grins for them both, but he grits his teeth and shakes his head, surreptitiously dragging his finger across his throat pantomime style. Great. Oh. And lucky me. Fear seated in my section. It's obvious she was bloody furious with him about something. He spends the first half of the meal seething quietly, and the second having a constant pop at him. While she was in the loo, the manager made me double check he didn't want us to bring the ring out or anything. Fuck no, was his response. I felt really bad for him. She really was mean. Younger couple came in for what I can only assume was a first date. Ordered a pizza but never ate. Caught up in conversation I guess. Guy must have been feeling confident. We see about 2 hours in he gets up, goes to the bathroom, and then decides to sit next to her in the booth rather than across from her where he was before. I swear to you, she then got up and used the restroom about 10 minutes later, and when she came back, decided it would best if they didn't sit next to each other and sat in his original place. Please refrain from doing this. Edit. Feels like I've answered 1,000 times, so here. No, there's, in my eyes, nothing wrong with sitting next to your date rather than across. I realize that, as long as you're comfortable with it, you can do whatever. Who cares what people think? The awkward part is that he moved next to her and she decided to move to the different side in response. Long story short, please don't make me watch an unnecessary awkward situation. You can always, maybe, ask if it's cool if you move next to them before you do it. I worked at Pizza Hut and the guy asked if I could bake a ring in the pizza. I politely declined. Their waitress did however put their ring on the pizza before bringing it to the table. The girl saw the ring, got mad, yelled at him for proposing at a Pizza Hut and walked out. He asked for a box, took the pizza, and went after her. Edits. The store I worked at was the old buffet style store converted into a sports bar, so did serve beer and wine, which none of the others. Pizza Huts near my location did, so I guess a little bit fancier than a normal Pizza Hut, but still a Pizza Hut. And I would never have thought a story about a failed proposal in a Pizza Hut would be my top comment. Depends on who you ask as to whether or not this is a disaster. Place I worked at in college was a pretty nice establishment and a romantic destination because our view overlooked the entire city. It was also located at the top of a 5-star hotel that had several projectors cycling through what was going on around the hotel in the lobby. There was no footage from the gym or pool, so it was relatively tame and never a privacy issue. Best you'd ever get were people eating, walking around the lobby, or drinking at the bar. Anyway, guy walks in with his wife and asked to be seated in a secluded area. Well, you can imagine, since it's busy and Valentine's Day we didn't have those, so he basically waited an extra hour to make sure he was seated in the back corner. It's my section. I take their drink order and take care of them, though the husband was gone when I returned and I didn't see him go to the bathroom. Thinking nothing of it, I go to the bar to get the drink and see all of my coworkers huddled around the monitor above the bar along with everyone else in there. Sure enough, I found the husband as he was underneath the table going down on his wife. Only problem was the camera above their table had a clear view because it was situated in the corner, so now the entire hotel lobby can see as it cycles between us in the bar laughing, people checking in, and our romantic couple dining on each other. More and more people start to notice, and the bar fills up. This includes back of the house staff like dishwashers and the line cooks. Eventually it also brings out my manager, who runs over to their table, tells them what happened, and they both run out mortified. But before they do, the husband tries to stand up too quickly and flips the table, ruining all the plates, while also exposing that his fly was down and his dick is out. He's yelling at my manager, the hotel manager, who came up when he saw it in the lobby, and security unzipped as Hez escorted out. So yes, disaster for them, but man, they made a lot of people laugh that night. I have one from a different perspective. I was serving at the Melting Pot and a 4-top came in. 2M/F couples that were sat in the section next to mine. About 10 minutes after them sitting down, I noticed that they don't have drinks yet, not even waters. We were backed up, but they at least should have had water. I checked in with their server and he said he was totally backed up. So I offered to get their drink orders. I took them, put them in, and ran them for the server. By this point they should been on their second course, salad, but hadn't even had their cheese yet, first course. So I check in with their server again and end up offering to take the table because they're so behind. They say sure and thank me. The table finishes drinks and dinner and give me a huge verbal tip, even asking me to get my manager so they can tell him how well I did. I was bracing for a 0% minus 10% tip. The one dude who paid left me a 400% tip, $1,000,000. I was the disaster. I was a new server. And horrible. I dumped an entire tray on the floor. My bad. Edit. I'm loving all the servers sharing their stories. For everyone still in the business, may the odds be ever in your favor for Valentine's Day. May your customers tip well and not be assholes. As a newish waitress I was helping work a birthday party. Turned out it was for an acquaintance of mine and knew them fairly well. It was time to bring out their ice cream cake, and as I was bringing it out on a tray one-handed, I suddenly tripped and the cake was sliding forward. Apparently my body was already prepared to save this cake from imminent destruction and my free hand caught the cake by the top. So it was sandwiched between my hands. I was absolutely mortified and nearly in tears. The party told me it was okay. The cake was saved and they just cut the top off. But this event still causes me to lay awake at night. Hope this made you laugh because I haven't told a soul about this. Haha. Edit. First, thank you to everyone for the rewards. Came back to my phone and was overwhelmed. Second, to everyone commenting how y'all done something similar. Thank you for sharing your great stories. I'm crying laughing at the man. Third, because I forgot to clarify. This happened over 10 years ago. Yes, it haunts me till this day and I believe it will forever. I'm a bartender, but happen to be the one on the date for this particular disaster. So anyone in the service industry knows. You generally just do not make plans on certain holidays because you will have to work. No matter what. I had not had a date on Valentine's in probably 7 years. So when my boss gave me the day off I was surprised and posted something dumb on Insta about it. I got a DM from a girl I knew, but not very well, asking me out for Valentine's, and she was way cute, so I figured why the duck not. Things went so wrong. So quickly. We get to the restaurant, grab a drink in the bar while we wait on our table. Took a shot to get the social lubricant flowing, since we don't really know each other very well. I pay our bar tab, and we move to the table. To set the scene a bit, this place is a really nice steakhouse and they have these dark red diamond pattern booths that are fluffy, with buttons at each point of the pattern. Hard to explain, but it looked something like this. link.com/classic diamond button back dining booth with side walls and curved top B1043 HTML. The moment we sit down, my date lets out a blood-curdling scream like she had just been stabbed. She grabs her arm and her hand comes away covered in blood, and she looks so confused, and I have no idea what the duck just happened. I look around thinking someone just stabbed her, but everyone around us is seated just staring over at us. I move over to her side of the booth and grab the napkins off the table to find where she is cut. The entire back of her upper arm is sliced from elbow to shoulder. One of the buttons had broken off of the wall and the snap metal fastener was exposed, so when she sat down her arm ran all the way down along it. She is panicking. I'm trying to stop the bleeding while the people around us figure out what is going on and call 911 for us. The manager comes over and is immediately a defensive asshole until he sees that it was his booth that did the damage. The paramedics show up. I get the owner's info from the manager, and we spend the night in the ER where she needed something like 80 stitches. We both are exhausted at this point when a guy walks in with flowers, champagne and a bag of tequila food from the restaurant we had left. It was the owner of the restaurant coming to make sure we could have the Valentine's meal we had missed out on. Sure it was. Probably because he was afraid to get sued, but it was still really welcomed after how shitty the night had become. So quickly. She and I ended up dating for almost 3 years and became good friends with the owner. Such good friends she ended up banging him, and that was the last I heard from either of them. Woo. Valentine's. I have stuck to working those nights ever since. The end. Edit. I would like to sincerely thank the people going through my comment history and messaging me things like maybe if you didn't play so many video games like a man-child then you wouldn't get cucked. You guys are making my ducking night, and it is hilarious. How dare people enjoy things. Also thanks you/PMJM for throwing the chair pic on Inga, since we killed the site. Link. Inga.com/FN0xim. GIF. This story is an emotional roller coaster. Love it. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.